That was the list.
Come on in Chicago with Beyond the Beltway. We are live on Facebook. We're live on BeyondTheBeltway.com. We are live also on YouTube, and our phone lines are open at 1-800-723-8289. That's 1-800-723-8289. And also, we will have taking questions and email at Beyond the Beltway 2019. 2019. It's a new it's a new email address for it. So Beyond the Beltway 2019. If you want to tweet me, it's at Dumo at DUMO. And of course, you can join us on the Beyond the Beltway Facebook page. And here's what we've got. We're planning to be here for a couple of hours. I don't think we're going to be here for more than a couple of hours. But we're looking for reaction from people around the country. If you've watched the debate, I would hope that you're not part of an organized plan to call in and promote your candidate. But we've got a couple of interesting guests here with us in Chicago, so we're going to offer their assessment. And Del Marie Cobb, you have been involved in Democratic candidate campaigns for a long, long time. And I want to ask you, we also have Derek Addis with us, who's an independent. But I want to ask you, when you looked at the stage of the 10 Democrats tonight, and you've watched them for 2 hours now, who are the one or two that stand out in your mind that they stand out in your mind, whether they were really good or really bad?
Well, I would say that Bill de Blasio and Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren and Beto O'Rourke, not necessarily because I favor him, but he certainly stands out.
All right, and Derek Addis, you're an independent. So same question to you.
Same question. Yeah, no, I echo the de Blasio. He actually surprised me. And to be honest, when he said that he was going to join the race, I was like, wow, another body to the pile. But he actually came out with some really strong talking points, and he actually had some concrete policy things that he came out with. I would say, though, I do want to say that I feel like Elizabeth Warren did incredibly well for this debate. I think she really did splendid.
What was it about her that impressed you? Because my answer to my own question would be Elizabeth Warren was good at the opening. Mm-hmm. She had a very good close. I can't think of too many memorable things she said in between. And when I look at the rest of the list, just to sort of agree with what you said, I thought de Blasio was better than I thought. He wrapped himself in all the liberal tenets of the Democratic Party. I thought that Jay Inslee tried, but didn't quite make it. I thought Amy Klobuchar missed her opportunity. I think she's not going to go too much further in the race. I thought that the Battle of Texas between Castro and Beto O'Rourke, Castro had more of an impression than Beto O'Rourke, and I think he landed a couple of punches on Beto. Ryan was trying, but didn't really get enough time to talk. I'd say the same thing about Tulsi Gabbard, and I'd say the same thing about John Delaney, who was trying to get in there. And Cory Booker was there, but I don't know whether he took a huge bite out of Elizabeth Warren tonight.
No, I don't know that he took a huge bite out of her, but this was a first impression, and that's what this debate was all about, is making a first impression to the American people. And it's going to be one of many, as you say, for some, and for some it won't be. But Cory you've got to look at their gravitas and if they're presidential.
Right.
And I think in those regards, the people that we talked about, and I would include Julian Castro, who I did not mention, but I think the ones I mentioned all had the gravitas and looked presidential.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's by design, right? I mean, they have these people behind their campaigns making them look
Yeah, but
extra
de Blasio,
special, nice.
At 6
but
feet 6 or 6'7", I mean,
he had the
looked
microphone.
presidential.
It was standing
Yeah.
straight up the microphone.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, well, I mean, I would not like to say that your height makes you more presidential. That means I could probably never be in the running for that. I'm an average height
I'm
male.
sorry.
But, yeah, but if I may. Yeah, no, they all spoke. They were very well rehearsed, you could tell, with all their talking points. And the reason to go back to your thing about Warren, while for you it may not have been memorable, the things that she was saying, for me it was the genuine nature that was emanating
Yes.
through the television as she was saying these things. So
Yes.
while they may have been scripted, they came from what I feel is a really good place.
Yeah,
So-
no, I think she was
No, I
warm
agree.
and a little more personable than she is in some stumps.
But going back to what you said, Beto is certainly tall, but he wasn't presidential to me.
No, he was not.
No.
I think he lost the Battle of Texas tonight to Representative Castro.
I think so too.
Yeah.
1-800-723-8289 is the phone number again. You can also send us an email at beyondthebeltway2019. If you want to tweet me a comment, it's at Dumo. And we're going to go to a call now. Ken Davis is an old friend of this program, and he was watching. And Ken, what was your? Let me ask you the same question. Who do you think, or one or two people that stood out in some way, either for good or for bad tonight?
Well, I guess my overall feeling is that Elizabeth Warren held her own. I think she did a very good job of articulating the views that she has, and I think if there was any possibility that anybody was trying to bring her down, I don't think they succeeded at that. But I was sorry.
Go ahead. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead.
I think that Julian Castro actually did a very good job. I'm having a little bit of a problem with the echo here, but
Well, we borrowed the engineers from NBC.
Yeah, I'm hearing the voices from former moderators or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, Julian Castro, I think, did a very good job of bringing himself into the picture in a way that he hadn't been before necessarily. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, no,
and
I agree
generally
with that.
speaking, I think that there was pretty good energy from pretty much the whole panel.
Is there anybody? What was your take on Elizabeth Warren?
Well, I think she did. Like I said, the thing, it was for her to lose ground tonight, really, and I don't think that she did.
No.
I think that her statements about, well, for one thing, that really stuck out for me was her statement about abortion, which I think is very
Go
critical
ahead.
because. You hear me?
Hello, are you still
Yeah.
there?
I'm still here.
Okay, keep going. We lost what you were saying.
Oh, well, what I was going to say is that, first of all, she made a couple of very good points about finding that narrow space in the issue of gun control, in saying that, that the people who are gun collectors, they're not the problem. The problem is others, and that we've got to find the courage to differentiate and go after the people who are essentially the troublemakers with guns. And I thought that was an interesting parsing of the issue that I
Isn't
hadn't seen
that
before.
what
And also
I?
think
Was that
she's
wishy-washy
made quite
though,
a
Ken? Was that?
name-
I mean, I wrote down sort of wishy-washy. That was the issue that she really she softened up sort of the hard left position or the anti NRA position of the Democrats. She did not come down real strong on that issue.
I wouldn't call that wishy-washy. I would call that finding a sensible way of trying to play the to play the importance of this to to an entire community. I mean, she's got to play to the entire United States, and
Right.
Yeah.
and this is not going to be an easy thing to do. And I think one of the things that Democrats have not articulated all that well is this notion that that the enemy is not the people who own guns and have owned guns for 50 years and they own them to hunt or they, for whatever reason, for collecting and that kind of thing. But there is a difference between that community and the community of people who own guns to make trouble. And there has to be a way to differentiate between them.
Okay.
Whether she can do that or not, I don't know. But I thought it was an interesting attempt to sort of bring these communities together if that could be done.
Ken Davis, thank you very much for your call. 1-800-723-8289. Wherever you're watching, this is a live presentation of Beyond the Beltway. So what you're watching is really happening. 1-800-723-8289. Call and weigh in. Derek.
Oh, yeah. I actually, sad that we lost Ken. I wanted to ask his opinion on Cory Booker mentioned doing licenses for guns, right? We have to get a license to drive a vehicle and to be a doctor and a host of other things, right? And so I guess for you two, what is your opinion on the gun licensing for existing owners and new? How would that work out? What do you feel?
Well, that's an issue. Certainly, as a Democratic consultant, we've talked about it often with my candidates, and it's something that I believe in because I don't think that if you have a license for all these other things, that's something that's deadly. You cannot do, when you kill somebody, that is not a do-over.
Right.
So why is it that we are not as stringent about guns as we are about all of these other things that certainly don't necessarily end up in death? But going back to the other thing that Ken said about Elizabeth Warren, I don't think it was wishy-washy either. In fact, I was impressed by it because it's not an either-or issue, and that's the way it's been presented and framed, that it pits one against the other. We're not trying to pit anybody against each other. It's an and both issue, and you've got to address both people when it comes to the gun issue, both groups of people when it comes to the gun issue.
Well, yeah, what I think is her answer was not a bad answer. What surprised me, it was more of a general election answer. And so I think maybe she was playing to more of a general election audience tonight, at least at the answer on the answer to that question.
I think it's a mistake to describe the people that are watching the debates and looking at those candidates as a voting monolith. While they probably identify as Democrats, the majority of people that are looking to find someone to vote for, they don't all feel the same, right?
No.
There are Democrats, card-carrying Democrats, if you will, who are also card-carrying gun owners, right? And people who have differing opinions. And so I think that in order to be electable, right, because that's the buzzword right now for the Democrats, to be electable, you have to do you
have to appeal to everybody.
To everyone. You said it was the and both.
It was and both. It's
and
not
both. You have
either
to do
or.
that.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't. And that's the problem that we have right now. Is everything's a binary, right? It's like either red or blue, or Republican or Democrat, and where is the middle ground, right? Like economically, we've lost the middle class, and now politically, we're losing the middle ground, and so it's unfortunate.
Did any of the lesser-known one percenters in the polls? Did any of them, were they treated fairly tonight, Del Marie?
Well, certainly.
If you were John Delaney, would you be happy that you were treated well?
Well, I think there was a couple of them up there. I could see their faces. They were not happy at all, and they were fighting for every second they could get. And I don't blame them. And that's what's going to happen when you've got 10 people up there on stage and you're the lesser known. You're going to be fighting for every second you can get. But that doesn't always mean that you weren't heard. Somebody heard you, and we saw that during the mayor's race here in Chicago, where we had 23 people running for office. And then look at the person who was 3% for most of the campaign, wound up becoming the mayor.
But of that group, de Blasio, he stood out.
Well, he interjected when he felt it most prudent to do so, and so it's kind of that was one of the things that I appreciated from his performance tonight, if you will, is that he's like, you're not going to give me anything, I'm going to take it, and I kind of, for me, I like that mentality from a candidate, right? Obviously, be cordial in your advances, but
and he did it in such a way though that unlike Delaney,
Yes.
who was fighting for it,
Yeah.
and Inslee, who was fighting for it,
Yeah.
he did it in a way that it was just, I'm going to take it.
I'm going to take it, yeah.
Because I deserve it,
Yeah.
and you're going to listen to me because I have something to say.
Well,
All right,
he-
that's a New York attitude. So
Exactly.
let me ask that question. Of the people that
It's a
were
Chicago
there,
attitude.
I
is,
know.
is de Blasio the guy that could take on Trump on his own, with his own script?
Well,
Because again, he's way behind
Yeah.
in the polls. I'm not trying to build him up as one of the top three guys, but I'm just saying, stylistically, he kind of proved tonight that he may be ready for a fight with Trump than many of the others.
well, when you're talking about
I don't think Amy Klobuchar came across as somebody that's ready for a fight.
Well, when you're talking about two New Yorkers going at it,
Yeah.
that certainly would be a very good fight, and I wouldn't mind seeing that. And I hadn't even thought about it prior to tonight, because I didn't come in here with any preconceived notions one way or the other about Bill de Blasio.
Yeah.
But I certainly am walking out feeling very differently about him than I
Yeah.
did when I walked in. And so I think, as one New Yorker to another, if they were going after each other, I think he could take him on. And he
Yeah.
could take him on some very different issues, because as he said up there, I am the only one who's up here on this stage right now who has who's raising a black son. And so when you bring in those dynamics,
Yeah.
he brings in a different set of dynamics that begin to talk to the group that's most important to the Democratic Party, and that is African Americans.
Do you think, on that subject, because it's important, do you think that Cory Booker did enough tonight to seriously challenge Kamala Harris, who will be on tomorrow night, who in many cases is fighting for the same vote?
Well, I think that Kamala Harris and Cory Booker are going to be in the race for the long haul because of the black community. The black community knows Cory probably better than they know Kamala, but they certainly are giving her credibility, and so, and especially among African American women. And so I think that right now they're being they're being considered with the same amount of weight and credibility.
Okay, let's take another call. Let's go to Mark Casello, who is also a guest on Beyond the Beltway from time to time from Northwest Indiana, and also from the Pullman neighborhood in Chicago. Mark, you are one of the most progressive people that we have on the program. Who stood out tonight for you?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Bruce. I think for me the big winner was Julian Castro. I think he was the big mover tonight.
I think you're right. He certainly won the Battle of Texas. By the way, we have a man
Yeah.
from Texas. Do you agree with that?
I am a man
Darren?
from Texas. Oh, no, yeah. Yeah, former mayor of San Antonio. He did very well tonight. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then Warren, I thought, had a strong start, but really faded, kind of shrunk in the last half. But I think she'll hold her lead.
Yeah.
She had some great messaging, strong keywords, corruption, courage, monopolists, the will of the people matters. So she cut through. Her messaging was strong.
And insofar as some of the also-rans, at least they have been described as also-rans, tonight was an opportunity for them to get back in the race. I mean, you've already mentioned, certainly Julian Castro was one of those guys who was, his campaign hasn't gone very far or electrified too many people. So this may be the jump start that he's looking for.
Right. Yeah, I thought Tim Ryan and Delaney could do more, but boy, they really didn't move the needle.
Yeah, well, but speak to, and I want to get everybody's reaction, speak to his point this evening, and that is there has been so much said about sort of the blue-collar worker, the working-class worker, the people in Michigan and Wisconsin and Ohio and Pennsylvania, the people who left the Democratic Party to support Donald Trump. He makes the point that the Democratic Party has to represent them more. Do you think that's the case, or can a Democrat be elected by appealing to the bi-coastal communities, the gay community, the African American, the Hispanic communities, and do they really need the white ethnic voter anymore? In your perspective for 2020, Mark?
Sure. No, they absolutely need to reconnect with those Midwest voters, the Rust Belt voters. And tonight's debate, though, unfortunately, for those leading candidates, didn't help do that. I think they're going to end up alienating some of those voters through the push of the social issues.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they're not, they haven't overcome that problem that Hillary had of connecting with those working class voters.
Derek?
Yeah, no, this is what I really regret about what the Democrats do and what they have done is I'm not a big fan of identity politics, except for one identity, and that would be American. And I think that's where the Democrats miss the target every single time. The country is way bigger than the major metropolitan areas. And I myself, I live in Chicago. I love it here. This is my playground. But I don't forget that there's millions of people who live on like 20 acres of land, right, next to someone else who also has 20 acres of land. And those people matter just as much as the thousands of us piled on top of each other here.
Right.
And so if the Democrats really want to win this election and they do want to reconnect with Americans, they need to, yes, talk about the options that are, talk about the issues that are specific to certain groups of people, but they need to not alienate everyone else by only focusing on the issues that only matter to certain groups of
Did
people.
Cory Booker and Tulsi Gabbard, did they make more of a point about transgender rights and transgender violence than they did about any issue that would play well in Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and the Rust Belt?
Well, I don't feel that they made more of an issue. I think that they certainly raised the issue, and they feel they have to, unfortunately. And that's where I think sometimes the ball is being missed as well, because I remember right after 2016, we did a town hall meeting, a group of us, and we had Walsh, who was a former elected official. He was on the panel with me.
Joe Walsh?
Joe Walsh.
That must have been fun.
Oh, yeah. So he was on the panel with me. And so we were dissecting the 2016 election. And I was saying how the Democrats had raised so many social issues that were alienating people who just didn't understand that in their minds the world is moving too fast. I'm not ready for this. You're talking about things that I don't even want to think about, yet alone have them in my face. And one of the black women in the audience stood up and said, you know, I'm a loyal Democrat, but you're moving too fast for me too.
Yeah.
And so that's what we have to understand, is that everybody doesn't want to deal with these issues. And everybody is not having to deal with these issues, but they are having their own issues. There are issues that we all deal with, and then there are issues that are specific or seem to be specific to, you know, the big cities.
Right.
And so we've got to appeal to everybody. And that's the, and I think the Democrats do appeal to everybody, and that's what they can't lose focus of. We are the working class
in a
party.
primary, you made the comment about identity politics. They had to check off the boxes, and one of the boxes that you check, it isn't just the LGBTQ community. It's the transgender issue. So I mean, you know, a couple of the candidates, you know, Cory Booker, I think, made the most point on it, and again, it's reaching out or pandering to that community at the expense of the people that Tim Ryan represents.
But I think Cory also brought it up in the context of being an African American too. And one of the issues that's not talked about is within the gay community, there is this subset of African Americans who are gay, who are suffering from bias in a very different way that does result in them actually being killed. And
Right.
people are not talking about that. People are talking about their freedom to be transgender, but people are not talking about what the ultimate sacrifice is when it's known that you're transgender as a black person.
By the way, we should mention that 1-800-723-8289, wherever you're listening, what you're watching and listening to, this is a live post-Democratic debate program, Beyond the Beltway. If you're watching us tonight, you are watching us either on our BeyondTheBeltway.com website, you're watching us either on YouTube, or you're watching us on Facebook, the Bruce Dumont Beyond the Beltway Facebook page. If you're watching us any other way, we don't know about it.
How are you finding this?
Tell us.
Yeah, let us know how you're finding it. But let's go to take another call. Let's go to Georgia Logothaides, who again is a frequent guest on Beyond the Beltway, a longtime activist and blogger for the Daily Cost, managing editor over the Daily Cost. Georgia, you've been waiting a long time for the gloves to come off. I will ask you what I've asked everyone else. Are there one or two people that you think did the best job and stand out, whether it's a positive thing or negative thing tonight?
Yes. Well, first of all, I think Warren did her job, which was not to mess up. She had a few very strong moments. Obviously,
Yes.
didn't get as much chance to chat in the second half of the debate, but she closed really strong.
Yes.
I think the breakout star, or one at least that you could say was close to a breakout star, was Castro.
Yes.
He obviously had the resume going in, and a lot of people were generally familiar with him, but he was really able to distill his policy positions into really good kind of, 1 or 2 second tidbits that really are going to be very easy in the post-debate spin to clip and play. In terms of who came off the worst, I think Tim Ryan came off the worst on that debate stage. Confusing Al-Qaeda and the Taliban in terms of who attacked us on 9/11. As if he wasn't a non-factor before, I think now it just made his political prospects generally a lot worse.
Going back to Castro, did he drive a stake through the heart of Beto O'Rourke tonight?
I don't think so. I mean, it seemed that way because it seemed like both of them were kind of jockeying for the upper hand on the immigration issue, and especially in outreach to Hispanic voters. I don't think so, but I do think that Beto it's interesting, if you look at all of the timers, he actually was one of the top in terms of amount of time spoken. But he didn't have that breakout moment that a lot of people were waiting for. But that's not really his style. If anyone that's kind of watched his career, he's never been the one to have these kind of breakout moments. His strength has always been in these kind of long-form speeches. Unfortunately, when you're on a stage with so many other candidates, it's harder to get the time to complete that circle and make that long-form arc that really resonates with people. So I think he came up a little bit subdued tonight when a lot of people were expecting something a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, juxtapose that with Castro, and when they're talking about the same issue, Castro certainly came off a lot more animated and a lot more, sometimes even more knowledgeable on a subject that is actually
he was pinning him down. I mean, he was almost like an interrogator.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I will say though, at times it's a little difficult to watch. I understand when one candidate wants to make his point towards, or even in response to what another candidate is saying. And while I by no means feel like Beto did well at all, it was a little frustrating when Castro was kind of trying to talk over him, but he was prodding him about the law that they're using, the criminalization of people crossing, and I want to hear both sides of that, and I think that goes to the problem with the ticket right now is there's too many candidates, and if we are going to have this many candidates, how about we have more debates with less people on the stage? Like, I mean, networks, they want to make money and ratings make money. It would behoove them. This one's for you, NBC. You can have this one for free. Just do more debates, right? Throw more events, have less candidates on the stage, and we can actually hear what these people have to say.
I mean, NBC has tried to give an opportunity to someone who's at 1% or has raised, has 64,000, funders. I mean, they're raising the bar as they go along. But at what point does the process become unfair to someone that maybe needs a little more time to catch fire?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. When the same way we do playoff brackets, right? The 8 seed plays the number 1 seed, right? And you're on the bottom of the list, but you got a chance to just hit it out the park. So, I think something along the lines of smaller debate stages. You mix up the rankings of the candidates, if you will. It would be better.
Beto O'Rourke and Cory Booker both spoke Spanish. Julian Castro waited till the very end to speak Spanish. Does anybody get any points for that in your view, Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic to do that type of outreach, especially considering the fact that some of the top policy issues on the table affect the Hispanic community the most, especially when we're talking about family separation. But, from a political standpoint as well, the Hispanic share of the electorate has only been rising, especially in states that are going to become key, like Texas and obviously some of the western states. So, no, it was a great thing to do. It didn't come across hokey, which I think is really important. Sometimes you see some candidates trying to speak in Spanish and it comes across hokey. These are people who are either fluent Spanish speakers, or, like Beto obviously learned it and speaks it well. So I thought it came off well. And it's a way to communicate very important issues to people that will be in the voting booth, naturalized citizens, people that are American citizens that speak Spanish. So I thought it was great.
Yeah, before you arrived, we were making the point that both of our in-studio guests said that, Bill de Blasio kind of surprised them tonight. He probably is the most liberal person up there, maybe even more liberal than Elizabeth Warren. Did he surprise you at all?
No, only because I've been following Bill de Blasio for so long. I mean, Bill de Blasio does what Bill de Blasio does. Policy-wise, he checks off all the boxes, and at the end of the day, I don't think he's the one that is in touch or in tune with the Democratic electorate for a primary. They're not poised to vote for a wealthy elder white man at the top of the ticket.
From New York.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, especially one from New York to try and win the White House back. That being said, I mean, he's a good politician in terms of being able to spit out those sound bites. I mean, he threw a couple one-liners out that got applause in. He knows which buttons to push among a more liberal audience. But yeah, no one I think turned into the debate and got automatically turned on to Bill de Blasio.
Right. Okay. Georgia, thanks very much for your call. We appreciate it. We're going to move on now. Let's take a second now because Derek, you've been looking at some of the Facebook response to the show. Let's read some of those things. Some of those we can definitely read. Some of them are profane to some extent, so we'll be cleaning it up a little bit, although we don't really have to, I guess.
I guess in full transparency, we'll read the comments verbatim, whether good, bad, or just a straight opinion. We have things like junior high age children do a much better job running to be class president. These folks are from the slow learner class and should all receive a high honors student bumper sticker for their car. So we'll leave that one as it is. Then they start talking about the Cubs. Some people are saying these people are not ready for prime time. The broadcasters seem to think they're running for president, and anyone is interested in what they have to say. I think he was mentioning how the Chuck Todd and Rachel Maddow were delivering the questions, which I don't know. Do you guys feel like they moderated it the second half fairly well?
I thought the first half, the moderators did a better, more professional job. Again, there was the screw up with the audio that
probably didn't help them.
They got off to a flying stop because of that. Let's go to a guy who is never at a loss of words. Charles Lipson joins us, again, a frequent guest on Beyond the Beltway, and he's from the University of Chicago, now an emeritus professor down there. Charles, your eyes were glued to the television. You're not necessarily a huge supporter of liberal democratic causes, but did you see anything tonight that would propel one or two of those candidates forward in the process?
Yeah, I thought that I'm getting feedback.
Okay. I don't know why. Keep talking.
I would say that you probably have the people who do NBC's sound working.
Yes, no, I made that comment earlier. But can you hear us now?
I can hear you, but I can hear me in feedback.
Okay, well, go ahead. Speak now.
Anyway, I thought that Rachel Maddow's performance put her in the first rank of the candidates.
That's what one of the Facebook comments just said, and it wasn't yours, Charles. I didn't read your comment. So
I mean, really, how can you do that if you're a professional news network? I mean, it's perfectly fine to have commentator people. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just you don't have them in this position where they're commenting on where they're supposed to be neutral questioners. I thought that. Let me sort of take a step back. It's really hard for any of the candidates to do more than sound bites in this kind of a format. And when they try to debate with each other, it doesn't work out very well because there are so many of them. Everybody wants to jump in. But, the audience were rabid Democrats, so the candidate that would have maybe the best chance in a general election out of that crowd, who is Amy Klobuchar, she just comes off as dull.
Yeah.
And her comments just seem kind of bland in that context.
No, I think she was the biggest. I think she was the biggest loser of the night, and I say loser because at one point she was considered, a prime candidate or a semi-prime candidate, and she was not up to prime time this evening. And in comparing herself to Senator Warren and also to Cory Booker from the U.S. Senate, I don't think she did well.
I agree with that. I thought that the problem that they all cause for themselves is the problem that the Democratic Party will have with the primary system, which is namely, the harder fought it is, the more they will take radical positions that will move them out of electability in November 2020.
What was the one or two issues that you heard tonight that you think meets that criteria?
Wiping out private health insurance. I mean, everybody's putting up their hand except Klobuchar and I guess the Tim Conway.
Tim Ryan.
Tim Ryan.
Tim Ryan.
No, not Tim Ryan.
Oh, no, Tim Conway.
Actual Tim Conway.
Who just looked like Tim Conway.
Oh, you're saying John Delaney.
Delaney. Yeah.
Well,
I kept expecting him to tell the elephant story.
Well, in all fairness, so the Medicare for All push that Bernie Sanders is supporting, that Elizabeth Warren says she's supporting as well, while it does take away the private insurance, it's not to the degree that you're speaking of. There still will be private insurance for elective surgery if you want to go have a Brazilian lift of sorts, or you want your eyelids to be a certain way, or whatever the case is. There's still going to be private insurance companies for that.
Well, now that I can get my Brazilian wax done,
so it's not a wax, right? We're talking about an elective surgery. Yeah.
No, look, this is a huge loser in the general election. My point is simply that the harder fought the primary battle among Democrats to win over a left-wing primary electorate, the harder that fought that is, the harder it's going to be to elect that candidate in the general election.
I'm going to ask our Democrats. I mean, that is certainly conventional political wisdom. Do you think that's correct, Del Marie?
I don't know if it's correct, because if you look at the fact that Lauren Underwood ran on health care.
Congresswoman from the western suburbs.
Exactly. She was in the 14th district, which was a Republican district, and she's African American, and she beat out 7 white men in the primary, and then beat out an incumbent. And that was the main issue she ran on as being a nurse. I don't know that that's a losing issue. And one of the reasons why Trump has not managed to get rid of, dismantle the Affordable Care Act is because the people in America once they started seeing what that meant to them, it was one thing calling it Obamacare and everybody was polarized, oh, Obamacare. But then when they realized, no, it's the Affordable Care Act and pre-existing conditions will not be covered and your children may not be covered and there's some other things that may not be covered, they had a very different take on it. And so I don't know that that's a losing issue when people explain it correctly.
Do you think anyone tonight clearly explained the problems on the southern border and their democratic solutions to them? Derek?
Well, I mean, that was one of the places that Castro, I guess he came out swinging with his, I feel like that would be his major policy issue, obviously because he's familiar with the territory, being the mayor down in San Antonio. But no, I mean, when he spoke about the law that they're using to criminalize people that are crossing, and that's the guys that they're using to separate people, parents from their children, separate children from whoever they came with, especially their parents. So he eloquently highlighted that, but I will give de Blasio credit. He said a line that I wrote down because it stuck with me. He said it's part of our job to make sure everyone understands that immigrants didn't do that to you, right?
Right.
So right now there's historically, humanity has done this over and over in droves. We find an enemy and a populist figure will, chastise that enemy and rile up a base of people. And right now I feel that it's happening again, and it's happening with people at the southern border. And so for de Blasio to say that on the main stage, I appreciated that.
What about a marshal? Go ahead,
Can
Charles.
I ask you a question?
Yes.
The Democrats there. Do you think that in the general election, the idea that coming across the border illegally should not be handled as a criminal matter is a winner?
Yes, I think that at the heart of every human, especially humans in America, separating children from their families is never the answer. Now, if we want to put the whole family together and detain them, not as criminals separated from their only people that they know and love, that may be the answer. But to separate a family, that is not the answer. No.
What about if a member of the family has violated the law? What should happen then?
Yeah, so
should there be something special that happens to the parents when they choose to violate a law? They got caught, and
so it depends.
The children don't see them.
Did they get caught just crossing the border, or did they get caught crossing the border with a pound of heroin in their backpack? That's a different story.
Oh no, but
Exactly, and that's what I was going to say. At what point do you know that they did something wrong? Do you know they did something wrong simply because they crossed the border?
Well, if that is something wrong, and there's a lot of Americans that think that is wrong, because there's a procedure in place.
I know.
So if somebody doesn't follow that procedure, they are breaking the law. So when they are taken into custody and they have had their day in court,
which they're not having now, right?
Well, that's a very different thing.
No. Some are not. Some are going through the asylum process, and they're being rejected by judges.
Well, we talked about the metering.
And those are the people that at least Trump is saying those people should be deported because they broke a law.
That's very different than what we're seeing right now. I mean, Trump is criminalizing everybody who's crossing the border. I mean, that's what he talked about. That's how he announced his candidacy when he first ran. That's been his whole theme, is that the people who are coming over here, they're rapists, they're murderers, they're that. Yes, we know, but we know that's not true.
You know what? There's rapists and murderers here, and I'm tired of that, because that is not an argument.
But the point is, here's my point. If you have committed a crime and you are someone coming from Central America and you are arrested, you go through the court procedure, and then you are sentenced to jail or prison or deportation, you lose your children. Now, everybody understands that, right? Does everybody understand that you lose your children? Because you know what? If a black guy sticks up somebody on the west side and he's arrested and he's convicted, he's going to jail. And you know what? His kids are not going with him.
But again, we're not talking about those instances. We're just saying that we're talking about what they mentioned during the debate was the decriminalization of crossing, the act of crossing the border. And against the law. Yes, the law says you cannot cross our border. But what we're saying is it is not right that because you crossed our border, we are now going to put you in jail and take your kids from you. That is where we're saying. Yeah.
Charles, I think that was the question you asked, right? That if you think in a general election, would the Democrats want to go to the polls with that as a pivotal part of the Democratic platform?
I think that the way that your gas. I'm having a problem, Bruce, because I'm getting complete feedback in my ear. That's the problem.
I have no idea how we can repair that because we have to hear you as well.
Okay, let me just. But that's the reason I'm sort of going slow here. The point that your guests are making is the argument that Democrats will put forward, and they're putting it forward as protagonists rather than standing back and looking at it as analysts. And I was asking them as analysts, do they think it's a good issue to go to the public
That's
with?
fair.
And I think that the way they're presenting it, which is family separation and so forth, is their strongest point.
Okay.
But
we became protagonists when
let's let Del Marie gonna respond.
We became protagonists when Bruce framed it, and so when you put it the way you put it, when you put it the way you put it as an analyst, if you want me to do it as an analyst and stick to the question that you asked, which is. Will it be a prominent plank in the Democratic platform? Yes, it will be. Mm-hmm. Will it be one that will win? In collaboration with all the other issues that are out here that will be a part of the Democratic plank, yes, it will. So that issue by itself, no. It will not be a winning issue. But in collaboration with all the other issues that are part of the Democratic plank, yes, it will.
It will be in the basket, Charles. We've got to move on. Thanks very much for your call this evening. Hopefully
It's great to talk to you, Bruce.
Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you soon. Another frequent guest on our show is Roberto Montano. Roberto, you may have a little different opinion than Professor Lipson, but again, I'm asking everybody to begin by saying who were the one or two people that stood out tonight, either positively or negatively for you?
Clearly, Castro. Castro definitely owned the arena he showed a little bit of gumption, which was, people were like aggressiveness. Mm-hmm. So even that, although it might have been uncouth, unpolite, that's how we talk. And as Americans, we like a fighter. And yes. If you come hang out at the bar with me, don't expect me to be polite when you're having your shot. I'm going to have my point to make. So Castro for sure. And hats off to Warren. Good close. Strong opening. Kind of lost her footing in the middle. But that's because Castro was beating up on Beto. Mm-hmm. And so Texas, round one, goes to Castro.
Is there anybody else? Is there anybody else that separates themselves from the? Would you agree with my comment that basically Amy Klobuchar was a picture that didn't develop tonight?
Yeah, I don't want to say anything bad about the dead. So
about the dead.
About the
About the what?
About the dead.
About the dead. Okay.
The previously
but
alive.
De Blasio surprised me.
Okay, I think everybody
I was
is
expecting him. I was not expecting him to do well like that, especially when his own state was booing him. He distinguished himself. It would be fun to watch him and Trump go toe to toe, two New Yorkers. But in my opinion, it's going to end up being Biden with a Kamala Harris VP.
Well, we'll see how each of them do tomorrow night. And I get the other name that we have not spoken about, and I want to get your reaction, and that's Jay Inslee. He was trying to get in there. Did he make any headway at all? Roberto?
Inslee was okay. Yeah, he said on immigrants, we welcome refugees, and it's not a threat, right? Washington would be very happy to have them. And that speaks to Charles's point earlier, if I may. You know, with respect to Professor, $4.6 billion was allocated today by the Senate Appropriations Committee, which advanced that vote in a bipartisan manner, 30-1.
True.
And $2.9 billion of that is specifically for the care of migrant children. So I would just say that the American people, both in the House and in the Senate, have clearly articulated that enough is enough.
Roberto, is it wrong for anyone to ask Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, you've been in control since January, why does it take you to June to do what you should have done and you had bipartisan support for? Why was that money not appropriated back in January, in February, so that we would have not gotten to the conditions that are occurring at the border now? The money is coming, but it's late.
It's late, and tragically, lives have been lost.
That's right.
And
that was a congressional action. That's a congressional action that took place, and it's good. And I agree with you that the money was due. But again, they spent much of the last 6 months saying there wasn't a crisis on the border, and there was.
I would argue that Mitch McConnell would not have supported this last week, and
that's your
tempered
guess.
the enthusiasm on the House side.
Okay. We're going to move on. Thanks very much. We'll see you soon on Beyond the Beltway, but we're going on with other guests. And joining us now is one of the leading political public relations, public affairs firms, leaders in the country, Rick Jeskulka from Chicago. And Rick, it's been a long time since you've been on Beyond the Beltway, but you've probably seen more debates, Democratic debates, than anybody around this table, maybe with the exception of Del Marie Cobb. So I ask you, who stood out tonight? One or two people that you think came, shot out of the pack.
Yeah, I was, and I didn't expect it to happen, but I was impressed with Amy Klobuchar. I thought she was rounded. I thought that she actually answered questions as opposed to most of the rest of everybody up there. And what she had to say was smart and concise. And I honestly, Bruce, I didn't think that was going to be the case, when I began the evening.
Well, go ahead. Derek Gaddis has a comment.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask, Rick, do you feel that the way that the Democratic Party is leaning now more towards progressive policies and just the ideas that comes with that, do you feel like she has the electability trait that we've all been talking about for that party?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't have said that going into the debate. So I honestly have been paying that much attention to her candidacy. That's on me, not on not on anybody else. But that's what struck me tonight. I was just sort of like pleasantly surprised. I thought she gave an excellent answer on the question of Medicare for all and where we ought to be going with health care. And I thought she was responsive to all the questions. And I think that voters are looking for somebody who can move the ball and actually get things done. It's great, like Elizabeth Warren has got all these plans, but at the end you have to demonstrate that you have the capacity to move something forward. And I just sort of got a greater feeling of confidence from Klobuchar than I honestly did with anybody else up there tonight.
Rick, you've been involved in a lot of campaigns, and you've seen leads fade. How confident are you with the position that Joe Biden has as he goes into the debate tomorrow? I mean, he's got to fall quite a ways to sort of get out of the leader of the pack. But does he have the ability or inability to do that?
Well, look, I've known Joe Biden for decades, literally. He's a friend, and I think, in terms of competency to be president of the United States, the capacity and the knowledge and the experience, there's no question he leads the way. He's also a very good debater, and so I expect him to do well tomorrow night. But whether or not he has the staying power over the long haul is something that I worry about. I wonder in my own mind whether the American voters are looking for a new generation of leader. And I'm afraid that I'm not sure how Biden will wear well over the course of a long campaign. I mean, we're sitting here in June of 2019, and it's still quite a ways until we get to Iowa and New Hampshire. And I just his track record in those kind of races, he tends to not fare well over the long haul. God bless him if he does, but I worry about it.
Okay, well, I think that you were not alone, and people will be looking for that last night. I mean, or tomorrow night, rather. They've had numerous opportunities to be reminded of Joe's foot in the mouth disease that gets him in some trouble. But we'll see if he can recover. If he can recover tomorrow night, I mean, he's going to be up against. I mean, he's got some pretty stiff competition tomorrow night. I think probably people will be looking to see how he does with Kamala Harris. I think that will be a principal battle that people will look at.
He's a pretty accomplished debater.
Yes.
So I expect him to do well tomorrow night. But I think that the polls can change in a heartbeat, and they have. I mean, look at Bernie's lost points, and Warren has come up, and Buttigieg has been up and down, and I just think where the polls stand in June of 2019 is not necessarily a good barometer of where they're going to be even in the fall of this year.
Well, Buttigieg is going to be an interesting guy to watch tomorrow because certainly he's had a very tough week as the mayor of South Bend, dealing with police community relations and the shooting of a black man there by a white police officer. But also, I think sort of the battle that's been going on between Buttigieg and O'Rourke. I mean, I think Buttigieg should feel good with tonight's performance or lack of performance by Beto, because I think, as the polls indicate, Buttigieg has moved beyond Beto, and I think if Buttigieg does a nice job tomorrow night, I think O'Rourke will continue to sort of fade into the woodwork. But again, in the very hot lights, and Buttigieg didn't fare too well in the hot lights of last week. We'll see how he does in a campaign where he's got the vice president right next to him, or Kamala Harris right next to him. And tomorrow night, I think obviously Biden has the biggest to lose, but he'd have to go a long way before he's not a front runner. But the guy that could stumble tomorrow night is Pete Buttigieg, because he's been on a roll, and this is the first time he'll get some journalistic proctoscopic questioning in the wake of what happened in South Bend. Rick Giskolk, I thank you very much.
I hope he doesn't, because I've been impressed with him. I think that he represents a new generation of leadership in the Democratic Party. But you're absolutely right. This has been a really tough week, and coming out of that and into a debate, he probably has more at stake tomorrow night than any of the other candidates.
No, I totally agree. On that note of agreement with one of the great, most astute PR publicists around, I say farewell with you. Thanks very much for joining us.
You're very kind. It was my pleasure.
Rick Giskolka also joins this evening. Also, let's reach out to him. Just a plain-speaking Americans from coast to coast. He lives in Evanston, Illinois. And Tom Couch joins us. Tom, you are not associated with any particular candidate, but was there someone tonight that impressed you?
Bruce, I was very impressed with Elizabeth Warren, who I have not been impressed with before, but I thought she was, she stated what she had to say, and I was very impressed with her. I thought she was the winner tonight.
Were you a Bernie supporter last time?
No, I like Hillary.
Okay. Are you worried about Bernie Sanders' age? Again, we'll talk more about this tomorrow night, but does his age, 77, bother you?
His age doesn't bother me so much as his message, which I think is not a core Democratic message so much. If anything, I'm probably more of a Biden supporter for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
I've liked Biden, but I've always thought that Elizabeth Warren was kind of strident, but I thought she really did well tonight.
Yep.
Also, Julian Castro, I thought did really well tonight too.
I think everyone has basically sort of gravitated to Julian Castro and to some extent early in the show with Bill de Blasio, but they were and they have also said that Elizabeth Warren had a strong start and she had a strong finish, but in between she may have missed a couple of points, or at least she didn't stand out the way that some of the other candidates did.
Well, one of the things about Julian Castro that I think about after seeing him tonight is I had wanted Hillary to choose him for her vice president. And so now that I've seen him a little more than I saw him even then, I just was looking at his resume at that time. And, you know, I even think now, even more so, she probably missed the boat by not choosing him.
Yeah, I mean he's incredibly charismatic, and more so he's actually pretty well read. I mean he's just not some guy that just ham-handedly got elected the mayor of San Antonio. I mean
Can we
he worked
elect
for that.
a President Castro? I don't think it would do well in Florida. I would predict it would not do well.
Well, you know,
in Florida.
again, I feel like we have to will certain things into existence. So I would like to not say it wouldn't do well in Florida. I'd say, you know what, maybe Florida's ready for that. Let's make it happen in Florida.
So progressive.
I
You are
am
so
incredibly
optimistic.
I'm coming from Mark's spot.
That's what's happened when you're in your young 30s.
In my young 30s.
By the way,
yeah.
we should also mention that Tom Couch is a professional radio guy. So, Tom, did you cringe when the NBC engineers and the sound people couldn't find the right microphones to turn off, let on?
Well, Bruce, as a former producer of the Radio Hall of Fame, I can say I was just glad I wasn't them.
Well, we should cast to us. We've had our own problems here this evening with audio. But again, Tom Couch, thank you very much for being with us.
Bruce, can I just say one
Yes,
other thing?
you
that
may
I wanted to
always.
share. I saw this tweet from the journalist Ron Brownstein. I think this sums it up really well.
Yeah.
He says, bottom line on tonight's debate, this is a stage with many more potential cabinet officers than potential presidents.
I agree
Yeah,
with that.
no.
Yeah, I see a lot of really, really great potential cabinet members. We have some comments on Facebook.
Yes,
if you want me-
let's go. By the way, I want to go to the comments. By the way, Tom Couch, thanks very much for joining us from Evanston, Illinois. I just want to mention this because I asked the question about Bernie Sanders' age, which we'll talk more about tomorrow night because he's going to be right next to Joe Biden, who will also be a thing. But here are the ages of the people that we heard from tonight. Elizabeth Warren is 69. Cory Booker is 49. Amy Klobuchar is 58. John Delaney is 55. Beto O'Rourke is 46. Julian Castro is only 44. Tim Ryan is 45. Tulsi Gabbard is 37. Jay Inslee is 68. And Bill de Blasio is 58. So that's the lineup that you heard speaking this evening. And I guess, you know, if we're talking about the age of Bernie Sanders and the age of Joe Biden, I mean, should the age of Elizabeth Warren be a concern that she's 69 years old and would be 70 by the time she gets elected?
Well, you know, I'm not concerned about any of their ages, mainly because when you look at how, I mean, Donald Trump is no spring chicken. And so when you look at who they're running against, I'm not concerned about any of their ages. The only thing that surprised me was that Tulsi and Pete Buttigieg are the same age.
37. Okay, right. All right, you want to read some people that have sent us notes?
Yeah, so I won't call people out too much. I'll just say their first name. So Roberto says Castro 100% name ID in Florida. I assume that's directed
to my comment.
Straight to you. Yeah, so we have climate change 2020 candidates. How did they travel to Miami? Don't know exactly what that's looking for. But for
They
you,
took a plane.
right.
That's
All
what they
right.
mean.
So Grant's asking Bruce, how do you see the two debates compared with each other? Seems that tomorrow night has more heavy hitters.
Tomorrow night does have more heavy hitters, and I think that the draw gave advantage to Elizabeth Warren. I mean, she was above the fray this evening. I don't think there was any fear that she was going to say anything that she would lose ground. I don't think she lost ground tonight. I think she probably picked it up, and I think the other person that probably picked up some ground tonight was Julian Castro. I think everyone else they'll be in place. De Blasio might be able to pick up a couple of points, but I don't see him as one of the major players at the end.
Great.
Who else have we got?
So, got to give a shout out to Freddie, who commented on a post that someone else shared of our live feed. The individual says, "I watched a lot. Yeah, I've been drinking, but Derek didn't get enough time to speak in my opinion. That boy's a thinker. I like him. I may be wrong, but I think he was holding back." So a little self-serving there on my part.
Speak it up.
But
Speak out. What
Freddie.
did you want to say?
No. I think he just watched maybe this first half of this live stream. But no, I appreciate the sentiment, Freddie. Definitely was interested in hearing the opinion of the callers. Also,
Paul Trainer writes, Booker and Castro were solid and should stick around. Warren was great and should be POTUS. The rest should go home. Booker exceeded my expectations. This is from Erica. Who else have you got over there?
I'll give a shout out to Billy, someone I used to work with. This individual just...
Are these just your friends that are calling?
No, they're watching. They're on the thing.
Well, that's good. Okay.
He gave a Trump 2020 shout out. So, again, that's all about having this discussion, right? So,
Warren and Castro, clear winners. Warren's clearly won. Booker did well. The other 8 on stage tonight were far behind. Castro was probably the best of those 8. I think that's coming clear tonight. I don't know how the others are playing, but Castro used his time. Although here's someone that says de Blasio was obnoxious and interrupted a lot. Klobuchar was decent. Well, she's from Minnesota. She's supposed to be nice. And he's from New York. He's supposed to be a jerk.
Well, okay. All right, so I have a question for you both.
Yes.
They spoke about the Iran nuclear deal and the pullout, right? And then the rising tensions now. So of the people on the stage, who do you think, if they're elected the next president, will be able to either reconcile that existing deal or to get a better deal in the future, or what? What do you think will transpire?
I don't think that anyone on the dais tonight is going to be the next president of the United States.
That's fair. But if one of those people on that stage, you got to choose one, but that's a fair assertion. I also don't believe.
I don't think either. I can't answer that because I don't think any of them will be close to the presidency.
But Klobuchar, I thought, had the best quote for that when she said, "Trump has made us less safe. We shouldn't conduct foreign policy in our bathrobe at 5 a.m."
True story.
Yeah, that was one of the funny lines of the night. But again,
and I think that's where Gabbard got a chance to show her knowledge in terms of foreign policy.
Yeah.
I thought that was the best time for her in the whole debate.
And she talked about her military service.
Right, exactly.
And Buttigieg might talk about that tomorrow night. But
so with that, if none of those people on that stage will be elected president in your eyes, what cabinet positions do you feel they may or may not hold, or would be qualified for?
Oh, well, they probably would be qualified for many positions, but I don't think we're going to necessarily get to that point. I think they got to pick a running mate, and that's always a difficult thing.
And the thing is, when you're at this point in a race, you're going to have flavors of the month. And it just happens. It's cyclical.
Yep.
And this person is the flavor of the month.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh, wow. And especially the media. And then next thing, they sort of fall down. And then it's the next flavor of the month. And so we're going to see that. And it's been Pete, Mayor Pete.
It was Beto, it was Pete, it was Kamala Harris.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we're going to see that. So, once they get the glare of the bright lights and then, the issues. And we're seeing for Pete, I was a TV reporter in South Bend for 2 years. And so, I actually love South Bend as a little town. population 100,000, because they call it Little Chicago, because it's the only place in Indiana that's really all predominantly Democrat. And so, but the fact that now you're seeing more and more scrutiny of him, because who knew prior to the shooting that under his administration, the police force in South Bend has gotten progressively more white. And so there's never been, I mean, I used to have to ask where the black people were in South Bend when I lived there. It's like, where are they? I never saw any. And now to see this happen, you know, is a whole different view of South Bend, because they're saying, wait a minute, this isn't new for us. This is the way it's been, and since you came into office, you've done nothing to rectify it. In fact, you've exacerbated it.
He has also been saying that as the mayor of a small town, or the mayor of any town, but certainly a small town, you deal with all the issues that a president might have to deal with, including and even reference, police shootings. So I mean, he sort of set up himself for his conduct last week, which most people did not give him a rave review for.
Right.
So I think he's going to have to pick that up tomorrow night. It'll be interesting to see what Kamala Harris has to say. Although I don't think anyone tomorrow night views Pete Buttigieg as a candidate that's going to knock them off for the nomination. No. I mean, he's there. He's an interesting figure. He could be a running mate. He could be a cabinet person, but he is still the mayor of a relatively small town. And again, he now has, he's seen the bright lights of a controversy, and we'll see how he plays tomorrow night.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, he kind of set himself up for the potential of backlash to come. I mean, he had to know that everything wasn't roses and daisies in his home, right? But he was on TV espousing, all the accomplishments that he made in South Bend, and that was literally the crux of his political platform. And I mean, I got love for the guy, and I think he has his very genuine intentions. But I think that there's been many a times in my life where someone said, "Hey, Derek, maybe it's not your right time." And I feel like I wish somebody would kind of pull him aside and say, "Hey, you know what? You got there. You got halfway there. Maybe this isn't the right time for you. How about you pull back and you fix South Bend, because you are the mayor of that place, and your priorities should lie there, and not with being the president of the United States before know."
And even one of the things he said about coming off the campaign trail to deal with the issue, and he said. He second-guessed himself in the interview when he said, well, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. I don't know if it was or not, but I am the mayor. And, and I'm standing there thinking, yes, it was the right thing to do, and that's what I would have told you to do. And if you'd done anything else, you really would have been in trouble, because you are the mayor. Right. And so you're supposed to address home first, because all politics are local. And so you can't talk about anything else if you don't take care of home.
Well, also, by the way, just in previewing tomorrow night, Joe Biden is going to be at center stage tomorrow. Bernie Sanders will be there. Kamala Harris will be there. Kirsten Gillibrand, who's looking for her campaign to catch fire, is going to be there. Michael Bennet will be there. Eric Swalwell from California, congressman from there. John Hickenlooper. The other tonight we had two people from Texas. Tomorrow we got two from Colorado. Senator or Governor Hickenlooper will be there, and also Pete Buttigieg will be there, and Marianne Williamson and Andrew Yang, two also rans. We're also losing a little electricity here, or is this a special effect that we're utilizing?
We're going all out for this live stream right now. You all have no idea.
Oh man! They will all be here tomorrow night. And by the way, we will be here tomorrow night as well. We're gonna end our conversation this evening, but I do want to say that tomorrow night we're going to do the exact same thing. We hope you will all watch the debate on NBC from 8 to 10 p.m. Central Time. We'll be on right after the debate, just like tonight. We'll have some more guests with us tomorrow night. And also keep in mind, we're going to be taking calls at 1-800-723-8289. You can also go to our new website. This is the new Beyond the Beltway email address, rather, Beyond the Beltway 2019 at Gmail. You can also tweet me at Dumo. And of course, you can tune us in at Beyond the Beltway, the Facebook page, where you'll get reaction from tonight's program, and also tomorrow night we'll be taking your calls from there as well. Again, I'm Bruce Dumont. Thanks for joining us for this special Beyond the Beltway Democratic Debate, Act number 1, Act number 2 tomorrow. We'll see you then.